here to guide you through the morning so your lunch break gets here faster. Fun, fast-paced, passionate sports talk in East Tennessee. The new Sentinel Sports Page, presented by Image Matters on The Sports Animal and streaming live at sportsanimal99.com.
New Sentinel Sports Page brought to you by Image Matters on the Sports Animal, sportsanimal99.com. I'm Vince Ferrara along with Mike Griffith. We wrap up spring practice for each of the 14 teams in the SEC. 6 more left to have their spring games. We will wrap up 5 of those 6 next week. Time to wrap up our 5th team of the week after there are so many spring games on Saturday. So let's do our SEC Spring Football Focus. We go to Nashville as we review how spring practice and the spring game went for the Vanderbilt Commodores. We bring in from the Tennessean, Jeff Lockridge here on the new Sentinel Sports Page. Hey, Jeff, Vince, and Mike Griffith. Good morning. How you doing, Jeff?
Good morning.
Appreciate you coming on with us. Obviously, spring games, you look at the stats and can certainly be deceiving, but it seemed like, from what we read, the one of the teams, the black team, was pretty much composed of a lot of starters. What did you gauge out of the way it played out? Could there be much to assess from that spring game the way James Franklin did it?
Nothing to assess from the score. He did load up the black team. He wanted to see how all the projected starters and for that matter returning starters would do on the same team. I think he wanted to see a little cohesion on the offense and see how the defense would mesh that way. So it was basically the ones against the twos and the threes. So nothing really to take away from the score itself. More of a game where they looked at individual performances, and of course the offensive line, which has long been a depth issue for Vanderbilt, and kind of prevented them from having a true spring game for as long as I can remember. Only 8 healthy bodies there, so those guys went both ways.
What about the quarterback position? Looks like Jordan Rodgers had some competition, whether it's legit or not, hard to say. But what do you think about Rodgers' spring camp and then Austin Carter-Samuels and the other quarterbacks?
Rodgers had a pretty good spring. He's never going to have, I think, the arm strength that a lot of people would hope. But I think his poise, his understanding of the offense has come along, especially since he took over as a starter midway through last season. The confidence is there. The confidence from his teammates is there. They voted him captain for this upcoming season, which is not a surprise. He looked pretty sharp most of the spring. I thought he had a few series where he didn't look particularly good, especially in the first half on Saturday. But then he had a couple of drives, including a long one in the third quarter where he did look sharp. With him, it's basically getting on the same page with his top 3 receivers, and that's going to be Jordan Matthews and Chris Boyd and Jonathan Krause, and maybe Josh Grady ends up slipping into that mix as well. But if all those guys get on the same page by the fall, then he'll be fine. Visiting
with Jeff Lockridge from the Tennessean here on the new Sentinel Sports Page, Vince Ferrara and Mike Griffith. Jeff, what kind of access did you guys have as media members for spring practices under James Franklin this year?
Totally different from the fall. Of course, you guys probably know under Bobby Johnson and Robbie Caldwell, everything was open all the time, including fall practices throughout the season. Last season, we were allowed to see about 15, 20 minutes of practice on Wednesdays only, and then interviews a few other days, but that was about the max we were able to see of practice. Throughout the spring, it was open not only to the media, but to the fans as well, so we saw as much as we wanted.
Did you get a look at a guy that's from down the road from us, from Maryville High School, Patton Robinette? Did you get a look at him here in spring?
Saw plenty of Patton, yeah.
What'd you think?
Yeah, well, first off, I knew he had size in terms of his height, but the guy's got a little thicker. I think he carries himself well, and after a year in the weight room, he's going to look the part for sure. Real nice arm. He may have a stronger arm than Jordan already. I think Austin Carter-Samuels probably has the strongest arm of the 3. But once he gets an understanding of the offense and goes through his progressions a little quicker than I see him being a starter 2-3 years from now for sure. He may have to wait in line a bit, but he certainly looks the part already.
Have you had a chance to talk to him or maybe gauge if he has any sort of chip on his shoulder by maybe not being pursued by Tennessee at all?
We haven't had that conversation yet, just in terms of the Vols. A situation where he changed his mind late in order to come to Vanderbilt. So
right.
I think that was the majority of conversations he had on that topic.
Visiting with Jeff Lockridge from the Tennessean, certainly not much of the running back position this spring because of injuries and other things. Zach Stacy apparently got through okay. What about in the fall? What do you see from this running back position for this team?
Well, keeping Stacy healthy is first and foremost priority one. I was, impressed and a little surprised that he was able to stay healthy all last year because they rode him pretty much all season long, and he took a pounding and took some hard hits and kept getting up. And he had a little bit of trouble staying on the field the first couple of years, but he looked really strong last season. If he carries that over in the fall, he's going to have some Vanderbilt rushing records to himself. Warren Norman is the biggest question mark. As we wrote a little bit last week, he finally practiced at full speed for the first time in a very long time. He never looked 100% to me last fall, even though Coach Franklin said on a couple of occasions he could play if he had to. But ended up getting the medical red shirt. And if Warren is healthy, then that really loads up their backfield and gives them some options. They don't have to ride Zach quite as hard. But there's always that worry that when you get knee problems that continue to resurface, that it could be a chronic issue.
Jeff, what about on defense? Certainly some veteran players have moved on now. What guys stood out to you that maybe had some good springs or some areas that are of note on that defense and trying to shape this team this year?
Biggest question mark remains linebacker, especially with Chris Marv leaving in the middle. They're going to move Chase Garnham over to the middle from the outside. He's still a young guy, not a particularly big guy like Chris was, and not a particularly vocal guy like Chris was. So they're going to need to see progression from him. I think Archie Barnes is actually the key to that unit on the outside. He's the most athletic and the quickest of that bunch, so he'll need to have a huge season. You lose Tim Fugger at defensive end. That's a big loss. Walker May is going to have to become the next big pass rusher coming off the edge. He's a junior that has that ability, more of a pass rushing guy, as are most of Vanderbilt's defensive ends now that I think about it. So stopping that run with the front four will certainly be a focus. And then you lose Casey Hayward and Sean Richardson, a couple of very key guys and longtime starters in the backfield. They're going to try to cover that up with just depth. Andre Howell, Eddie Foster, some guys that have had experience, not necessarily a ton of starting experience, but guys that have been on the field are going to have to fill those spots.
Kicking game was an issue for Vanderbilt, as you well know. Any progress, any positive signs in that area for Vanderbilt?
You never know until it gets season time. They looked okay in the spring, and it's you figure it's going to be a three-man race. You got Colby Cook, who was an All-American high school kicker coming in from Virginia, I believe, and then you combine him with Fowler and Spear, who basically alternated that job. It was whoever was missing the least last season. So flip a coin. We'll see how it works out in the fall. I give the edge to Spear just because of his leg strength, but Franklin's going to go with whoever's hitting in practice. And
he may flip a coin on the sideline to try to figure it out as well. Hey, Jeff, real quick, tell everyone about your coverage in the Tennessean.
Yeah, Tennessean.com to check us out. I'm on Twitter at Jeff Lockridge.
All right, Jeff, appreciate it. Great to talk to you. Have a great rest of the week.
All right, take care, guys.
Thanks. That's Jeff Lockridge, our SEC Spring Football focus on the Vanderbilt Commodores.
The Vols play here. The Sports Animal.